Hi, my name is Brahmachari Prashad, and it's a joy to be sharing with you about Ananda music, the impact it's had on me, and the influence and blessing of Swamiji's inspiration that's the music is such a great channel for. So I started with Ananda in 2012 in Ananda Palo Alto. In late 2013, I moved to Ananda Village, and I've lived there ever since. It's been about 9 years, and I've been involved with the music since pretty early on. That first year in Palo Alto, I joined the choir and learned harmonium, learned the chants, and when I got to Ananda, I was already pretty fluent at the guitar, so I became part of the kirtans as well. I can definitely say the music has been core to my journey on the spiritual path. Both, you can sort of separate Swamiji's music, his written songs, his choral songs, his instrumentals from the chanting, the more devotional side inherited from the tradition of India. And both have their very strong place in my personal sadhana, in my devotion, and in my outward service. So my time in Palo Alto was relatively short. It was a very blessed time. Swamiji was still in the body in 2012, but going to choir every week, getting to learn his music was fun and engaging, and it's sort of a good training period. But when I moved to the village, there was definitely a deepening in terms of the music. I think primarily from working with Ramesha with my voice lessons and turning up the focus there. Working with him definitely, well, I worked on my voice a lot, but I think had the opportunity to learn the music more deeply. And of course, naturally with the songs, the more you sing it, the more you perform it, the more energy you give it over time, it definitely grows on you. I do sort of have a special dispensation, Durga once called it, of learning the harp. I picked up the harp in 2014. Jeannie Shantz, who was the choir director here at the time, and she asked me to pick up the instrument. She had played it for many decades, actually, at Swamiji's request. So I think the story there goes that Jeannie brought a little Celtic harp, like a small harp, with her when she moved to Ananda Village, and Swamiji went to Egypt and wrote some songs, an Egyptian suite. And when he came back, he asked Jeannie, can you play these songs on the harp? And she said no, because the Celtic harp she had was too small. So in a matter not too long later, Swamiji one day, I think, came up from a trip from Southern California and surprised her and said, "Guess what I have for you? Full-size pedal concert harp." And so she took that on. She learned some pieces, but in 2014, it was time for her to pass the mantle. So I picked that up, and that's been a very special blessing. The harp, of course, is an astral, beautiful instrument. Swamiji wrote the two great albums, Mystic Harp 2, in collaboration with Derek Bell of the Chieftains. So I started learning some of those pieces. Some of the songs in the Christ Lives oratorio feature the harp or have the harp for accompaniment. And so those are sort of the core songs that I learned. And a very precious instrument. I think it touches the heart very readily. One of my favorites is Mukunda, the song Mukunda, which Swamiji wrote capturing the spirit of Master in his youth. More recently, during the pandemic, my singing has taken a deep sort of a deeper step. With the constraints of COVID and all of our in-person events shrinking and things going online, I focus more on singing in the small group, the Joy Singers, the quartet, with Ramesha, Bhagavati, and Satyana. So singing a lot and focusing a lot more on my voice, on pitch, working with Ramesha on singing with consciousness, really being a clearer, more focused channel so that I could more fully express the music. And along with that, singing some vocal solos, such as with the oratorio. Some of Swamiji's more really richer 4-part songs, like Where Has My Love Gone? Tuning into some of the solos, like Mother of Us All, God, God, God. So, so the demands of the pandemic, having to sing in a focused small group pretty much every week, while also having my weekly lessons with Ramesha, I think that required me to put a lot more energy, raise my magnetism around the music, and I felt closer to it, more inspired by it. I think our impact is definitely reaching people's hearts. And that's where the community aspect of the music has really shown through. What Swamiji envisioned. I mean, there's simply the raw, creative, divine inspiration that Swamiji had and was a channel for, which he infused with his songs, but paired with his intention to share share his vibration of love, of divine qualities, of philosophy and song, his intention of sharing that through the music as a vehicle. I feel I've been privileged to be a part of that, especially over the past few years, seeing how much it touches people. I think Ananda is currently at an expansive time. That was one of the things. Just the timing of the Temple of Light being this magnificent place of worship, designed by Panduranga. I mean, it's beautiful simply as a place of worship, but also amplified with the acoustics, being sort of a focal point, an energetic focal point at Ananda Village. Getting to participate in the small group with the music in that temple as a broader service, as an energetic broadcast of sharing, has been an opportunity to feel part of that divine flow which Swamiji envisioned with his music, seeing the reaction, hearing people's responses, their gratitude, the light, the joy, the light in their eyes, the joy that they express from hearing it, has been a clear blessing. And I feel, it's a great blessing to be part of that greater service in this sense of community, this sense of unity, harmony, of connection, the music being a way for everybody to be able to connect in a divine way, has been one of the blessings of the past few years. There's more I could talk about. I think that gives an overall summary of my beginning to end. With being at Ananda, in reflecting on the subject, I could also go back to my earlier experiences with music and sort of fundamentally how that overlaps with spirituality am I eventually getting on the path and touching upon the spiritual essence behind the music more deeply. And, you know, music in the way it touches the heart, in the way it expresses feeling, and in the way it changes consciousness, influences consciousness, is sort of like this fundamental philosophical or spiritual reality. There's a reality to how music touches us. And I experienced that starting from an early age. And music has always been a part of my life. And in a way, it built up to me coming to Ananda and sort of set the stage for me to be more fully engaged once I got here, where music is such a rich part of the overall scene. And starting from childhood, one of the few stories that my mom would tell me about when I was a baby was that I was a pretty good kid. So, I was pretty calm and didn't cry very much. And if I ever did, all she would have to do would be to sit me in a swing and turn on some music, and I'd be all fine. And I felt that was a formative part of my consciousness as a child, just being content, being calm and content. That's my memory of being a kid. And that story impressed me because I felt that I did have a blessed childhood, sort of calm, contemplative. I like to do more contemplative things, where I was like concentrating, whether drawing or playing with Lego. And I did start piano at a very young age. So spending long hours just with my mind focused on a creative, engaging task, I felt I still carry that feeling with me of being contemplative, preparatory for a life of meditation. And all that to say, my mom's story just made me think of Om. The Om technique itself is to listen for the inner sounds and become absorbed in that, and have that experience of meditation and communion. As Master said, or Christ said, Om is the comforter. Tuning into the sounds and letting that wash over your consciousness to bring you into a state of stillness and peace. That story that my mom told me resonated with that meditative reality. And as far as learning music, it was always a part of me. I think I was just blessed with having that karma. Who knows how many lifetimes I've already been practicing, but 3 years old I was introduced to piano, and I just picked it up pretty naturally, pretty easily. Played until I was at the age of 14, and having to perform a lot recently for Ananda took me back in time, because when you're learning piano in the classical way, there's a time when you come to start doing recitals. And I think I've been blessed with not having too much stage fright, and I'm pretty much, I'll just say it, over it by now from the experience of doing it so often. But I think that's something I also came into this life with. I can still see myself at, whether it was age 6 or 8, in the recital hall, having a few dozen people lined in the audience, and just very clearly, it's my turn to go up. I put the music up, I do my thing, and not too much more different than, say, playing it while I was practicing. So, yeah, it's a blessing to be able to have had that opportunity to study, but also having that ease with which to share. So as far as my assignment, my dharma to be sharing this music, I guess I just chalked that up to experience, which is evident in having sort of an early start with all these things. And there's an interesting lesson about reincarnation with music, just like the fact that nobody else in my family has any sort of musical inclination. They never studied it, never learned an instrument or anything. It's only me. And that always puzzled my family. It's like, what's with it? They're like, isn't, I guess it's not genetic, is it? And then so coming on the path and learning about karma and reincarnation, that you carry these samskars from past lives. It was just a nice example and of how karma and reincarnation is real. You know, we all each have our individual karma, like beyond just what we inherit necessarily. It's not all genetics. So that was a nice little proving point. So as far as my prior background, I'll just tell one little story about how I felt it was sort of there was a providence to. I started learning guitar at age 14, and my guitar teacher was he'd probably admit he was like an ex-hippie. So, and my dad was into music of the 60s, Bob Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel, and so those are the songs that I focused on. And there's some finger picking involved, and I just counted that as a particular blessing, because by the time I got to Ananda, it was just what I needed to be able to play. A lot of Swamiji songs were written in that style, so it felt as if those life experiences were preparing me for meeting this music. But to get to the heart of how Ananda music touches me, you know, I think back to my first year at Ananda, which was a very powerful year, getting on the path, sort of waking up to the spiritual path, not having had much prior experience before with anything so deep or a meditative practice. And I related a lot to Swamiji in that year, hearing him tell his story about meeting Master, you know, seeking truth, feeling desperate for truth, not finding it in so many ways that the world offered it, and finding autobiography and going to Master. And I associate that whole yearning and that whole search with Swamiji's song God's Call Within. That was, I think, one of the first songs that sort of struck me to the core, I think, in the depth of its spiritual yearning. And I think that's when I started to really get in touch with the deeper side of the music. So you just have to listen to that song. I did take it on as a practice to listen to Swamiji singing, because of what he could communicate through his voice. And so if you listen to God's Call Within with him singing it, and the way he expresses all the nuances of feeling, of yearning, of this call and response with God, I found that to be very powerful. I related to Swamiji. Swamiji gave so much also through his writings, and it interested me specifically when he wrote about his creative process with the music. And I'd done a little bit of poetry, had a little hand attempt at songwriting, nothing serious, but enough to sort of be in that mindset to find it really engaging, how Swamiji explained how he received his music. You probably get it through Treasures Along the Path. I think he writes about it in A Tale of Songs, but the way he received inspiration so openly, and how he was such a channel, the essence of he would have an intention for a song. He would want a melody to express this certain feeling or so on, and the melody would just be there. And that I found fascinating. And I'd had a few experiences, whether I suffered with writer's block for a long time, but when I could break through that and I felt like I had more energy and my conscience was clearer, that experiencing that minor epiphany made me feel a connection with Swamiji's creative process. And ultimately, this sort of does tie into meditation and raising one's level consciousness to a level of superconsciousness. But as far as the music, the inspiration, the path of meditation, there's sort of all these things overlapped by tuning into Swamiji's explanation of the creative process. And I mean, that was definitely inspiring. That's part of the backstory actually to the Mystic Harp, which is just one more thing that makes it one of my favorite albums. He wrote the melodies for Mystic Harp after taking a month-long seclusion, and he had to take that month-long seclusion in order to write the book Superconsciousness, which has gone through multiple versions. Now, the most recent is Awakened to Superconsciousness. So the idea that he put himself in, that he was in seclusion and put himself and meditated until he got into that state of superconsciousness for an extended duration, and on the wings of that wrote Mystic Harp. The connection I feel there is that these are basically superconscious melodies, and if you listen to it with that intention, I feel you can get that inspiration. Emerald Isle has to be one of my mainstays, one of my favorite songs by Swamiji, and the way that closes the album, The Mystic Harp, I tune into that song that way. I mean, you hear it, it's beautiful, it's captivating right away, but from studying, from all this background, I tune into it more that way. And I think that was actually a breakthrough for me. Somewhere maybe like 2015, 2016, after a few years of meditation, I did have an experience of meditating on that song. Intellectually, I've talked about Swamiji's creative process of how he drew inspiration from the divine. And that's when I sort of realized that I could reverse the process, just like how Master and Swamiji spiritualized their chants and to allow the devotion of chanting to take us into communion, divine communion. I realized that it's possible to try to do this with the music. And I did have a breakthrough, maybe 2015, 2016, by meditating on the song Emerald Isle. And the short of it is, after Kriya practice, after interiorization, and one is supposed to be sitting in the silence and seeking that depth of communion, I would just sort of mentally recall the song and see where that would take me. And as a devotional practice, basically. Yeah. Meditating on the music as a devotional practice in an attempt to tap in to the divine, the superconscious inspiration from which Swamiji drew the original melody. So I did this with Emerald Isle, and there's the third verse where he sings, come join me in singing of that emerald isle, of flowers that like jewels besprinkle the lea, of waterfalls eager to embrace the wide sea, as we with our Maker united would be, as we with our Maker reunited would be. I meditated on those lines, and I can say I felt I felt bliss from it. I felt Swamiji's connection with God. It was reinforced by a few events surrounding that time. It's like I had happened to go down to Ananda Palo Alto, and Asha was giving a talk, and she just happened to touch upon that song and mention those two lines and say, like, those two lines say it all. You look at nature, you try to see God in nature, you see him hiding behind the river flowing back into the great sea. And if you feel God enough that you can follow that thread and relate that back into merging the soul back into God consciousness, that truth is latent in those few little lines. And I feel like that was a great breakthrough. And that's just one song out of so many. You can look for God, you can look for Swamiji's whispers, Swamiji's own little whispers of eternity throughout all of the music, and let that inspire your own divine search. Yeah. So finally, I'd like to talk about the importance of Ananda music for us as truth seekers, as a spiritual family, and how it can really serve us and inspire us. So Swamiji has talked about how essential the music is to Ananda. He's called it's Ananda's coursing blood. And I had an experience that made this very clear to me. And it was after a Spiritual Renewal Week concert. I forget which year. But we have our concert at the Expanding Light outdoors in an outdoor amphitheater by Lotus Lake. It's always a beautiful time of year. Having an outdoor evening concert in the summer is just delightful. And it's not actually the concert itself that I remember, but I was the last one. For whatever reason, I ended up being the last one lingering in the amphitheater afterwards. And what I felt was there was something in the air, the energy of that entire space I felt had been changed through the concert, through the choir coming together of, I don't know, probably over 100 singers, of devotees from around the world, singing to hundreds of others, having devotees come together with amidst that peak inspiration, sharing over an hour of Swamiji's music, singing together, giving and receiving, being channels for Swamiji's music, had created a magnetism that I felt had palpably changed the environment, the energy there. And I felt that we had raised the energy of that space. It's what happens in places of meditation, of course, and I felt really uplifted in that energy. I felt that is the impact, that is the lasting impact of the music. When we sing it, when we share it and receive it, it made me think of how Master would separate the honey from the hive. Organizations are the hive, but God is the honey that makes it all worth it. When the hive and the honey can work together, then you have real spiritual power being lived in the hearts and souls of many devotees. And just the feeling of being there in that amphitheater that night, it's enduring, and I still draw on that inspiration when tuning into the music and in performance and sharing and giving. That's when I feel like I got a taste of the music's power and how it can endure for people who are going to come and tune in and hear it, listen to it, hopefully sing it, and grow deeper in it. And I'm seeing that now more and more as the music is being shared, as people come up and seeing the inspiration that they feel from it. I know in my heart that it's at that vibrational level. That's what's changing them. That's what's bringing the light to their eyes. And that's the joy and the light that they feel. And I'm ever grateful for Swamiji for giving it to us, of course, but for the opportunity to be a part of it with everybody as one great spiritual family. So may that inspire you in your own journey with the music and in your own search.